Let's unbox the Black Series 6-inch figure of Jedi Knight Yord Fandar from the Acolyte. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. The first wave of Black Series 6-inch figures from the Acolyte series recently landed on toy store shelves here in New Zealand, and we picked up all 6. So far I have opened up 3 of the Jedi characters from the first wave of 6 figures. We looked at Jedi Master Sol, Jedi Master Indara, and Padawan Jekilon. Rounding out the 4 Jedi in that first wave is Jedi Knight Yord Fandar. Really excited to get him out, then I can line up all 4 of my Jedi figures from the Acolyte. Really been impressed with these figures so far. Some really cool details, the soft goods, some really fun details, and I'm sure Yord is going to be no different. I'm very keen to get him out so I can get my Acolyte Jedi figure lineup complete. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll get the Black Series figure out of the packaging so we can take a closer look. But first, let's take one last look at this new style of Black Series packaging. For the Black Series 6-inch figures for the Acolyte, we have the new style of Black Series packaging from Hasbro. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this version. I'm very nostalgic for the side angle. Most of my Black Series figures have that style of packaging, but once I had this in hand, I have to say I do like this one better. We've got a lovely black border here around the window, which is both taller and wider than the older style of packaging, which is great if you like to keep your figures in their box. You just get to see more of it. And the accessories aren't just sort of squished in next to the figure. We've just got a little bit of space to really appreciate all of the details. For the Acolyte series, we have an orange-red accent stripe underneath the window here. It reads Star Wars the Acolyte. And we used to have the character name underneath. It is now up the side in a larger font. It reads Jedi Knight Yord Fandar, and he is numbered 04 from the Black Series range of figures from the Acolyte. Moving on to the side here, we still have the side panel art. We've got Yord looking off to the side there, holding his lightsaber, and on the back of his hand we can see a little bit of some armor. I'm really keen to see the details on the actual figure as well. We've got the accent color leaning down to the bottom there. We can see his name there, Jedi Knight Yord Fandar. Really nice side art there. On the back we've got that same art again here, just zoomed in a little bit and cropped so we can really see that detail of the armor peeking under his robe there. We've got a little bit of a blurb, but like other figures from the Acolyte, this is about the series rather than the character. I think Hasbro was trying to avoid specific spoilers. It reads, at the end of the High Republic era, a former Padawan reunites with her Jedi Master to investigate a series of crimes, but the forces they confront turn out to be far more sinister and personal than anticipated. And then that blurb is repeated in a few different languages. We have that same accent stripe running across the back here, 04 Star Wars the Acolyte. The rest of the packaging is just sort of warning, copyright, barcode, jargon, all there. Now that lovely large window does wrap around to the side, but in this new style of packaging we do not have a window at the top. Personally for me, I like this because even though we don't get in that top little bit of light into the figure in the window, that was always a really tricky part for dusting for me personally, if you like to keep some of your figures in their boxes. And I have one of the older style packaging boxes here, and you can see that window. Just dust really seemed to collect in here, and because it runs under the cardboard, it was always really hard to keep tidy, and we've just got a lot of sellotape. This new style, it just looks just so clean, and it's just lovely to look at, I gotta say. We can see a little bit of a comparison here. The boxes here appear wider because they're not sort of cut off with this angle on the side here, like on this Obi-Wan figure. You can see the window is just a little bit taller and a little bit wider. We can see more of the boots, and the accessories have a little bit more breathing room. They were always packaged very tightly in around the figures. Another main difference with this new style of packaging, this front window is actually attached to the cardboard. When you slide the character tray out, this front window stays intact. When we slide the packaging out from this plastic is not attached to the cardboard, so the plastic actually slides out and it is just left with the cardboard. I gotta say, there's just something really nice nice. It's just lovely to look at. I really do like this new style. Very nostalgic for this one, but I gotta say this looks better, especially if you like to keep yours in the box. But I'm gonna be opening this one up, so let's get him out so we can check out all of the details. I'm gonna open up my Black Series Yord figure from the underside. You can kind of see from the cross section here that this is much thicker cardboard than the older style of packaging. It's actually corrugated cardboard, so it's very sturdy. The bottom flap has this little thumb cutout, which makes it a lot easier to open. We've got one strip of sellotape here that I have just already cut. It's just easier to open from the bottom. There we go. I do find that the cardboard tray inserts are a little bit hard to put back in, so I'm going to leave mine inside. The red color looks really cool. Now I'm just going to slide out the plastic tray. We can kind of see some of the printing. Now each figure has a different printed background, kind of soft and faded there in the back, but we've got that accent color from the Acolyte series there in the back. And you can see that the window stays intact. I really like this hard edge. So it's just something really nice and clean and rectangular about that. So now we can finally see our Yord figure out of the packaging, still in his tray. We can see that his soft goods Jedi cloak is tucked in here in the back. And I've found for the other 3 figures from the Acolyte that I've already opened that have soft goods, that this keeps them fairly nice and straight. I haven't really found them creased or crumpled. I really like how well this protects it, and we can see that he's got a yellow lightsaber. Very keen to check them all out. So let's snip the sellotape and get him out of the plastic tray. I now have the Black Series Yord figure out of the packaging and also his one lightsaber accessory, but of course I'm going to start by looking at the figure. It's always really fun to finally get your hands on a Black Series. They just look different when you get them out of their packaging and when you can sort of see them in a more 3D sense. So I'm going to start with the soft goods robe because there is some detail on his forearms that's hidden underneath the soft goods robe. We'll check it out fully and then I'll remove it so we can check out the articulation and the details underneath. I really like the soft goods Jedi cloaks from this range from the Acolyte. They're really well made. The one thing that I think will be of interesting note to collectors is the fact that the hoods cannot be worn up over the figures. So if this is like the other ones, and it is, when I pull it up, you can see that we have a small sort of tacking stitch here, which holds that point down. It is fully sewn. I cannot pull it up. But to be honest, I don't actually mind. I really like the way that the hood and sort of robe falls over the shoulders. It's really tidy because, of course, fabric is one of those things that doesn't scale quite as easily. It's like water. When you shrink it down, it kind of looks out of scale. So sometimes it can be hard to do robes that sort of fall like they would on a full-size actor. So I really like the way that they have sort of refined the patterning and the draping for this line of figures. So instead of having a small sort of separate hood that is sort of attached to the robe, it's kind of flowing here from this front edge. So it falls open, which I feel is more closer to the way the robes appear on screen. So while I can't put the hood up, I think this is a better way of doing them. I really like the way that it falls here. I love it. It just perfectly frames the figure. It looks like it did in the packaging. We just had this sort of section tucked behind it. Now we can see that it falls really nicely. We've got this sort of fullness here, but it doesn't look too big and sort of weird when we sit it. I really like the way it just sort of falls. It feels very in proportion to the figure and the character itself. And I've noticed that we've got some color variations with the soft goods cloaks across the Acolyte range being accurate to each Jedi. So of course we'll get our Jedi lined up later and we can check out the details and the colors of their soft good robes. I just thought it was fascinating that they're all different colors. I love that attention to detail. I thought, you know, brown fabric, that Hasbro might just use the same color across the range, but no, it's all quite different. So we've got a little bit of a thread here that I might trim. That's pretty much an easy fix. You can kind of see it sticking out here. But I do really like the way that they have stitched these robes. The edges are raw. They're not like turned over or sort of hemmed in any way, but they do feel like they're sort of laser cut or something. Really sharp, nice edges. I do worry a little bit about sort of fluffing the edges of raw fabric when it's in this. I particularly notice it with the Vader robes. I always end up with little flecks of black fluff on my hands after handling the robes. I haven't noticed that too much with this fabric, but I will be careful with it because I don't want to ruin the edges. I just like how crisp and sharp those edges are. So we'll carefully remove the robe now. I'll just sort of move his arms towards the back. I find that the easiest way to kind of pull them off. We can slowly slide that off over his arms, pointing towards the back. And we'll take a quick little look at the inside. We can see the really nice tidy seams here. Nothing is serged or overlocked. It doesn't really need to be. We can see that stitch here where the hood is attached in the back. Of course, I'm sure if you really want to, you can simply remove those stitches and sort of play around. You know, there is no wire or anything in this, because I know certainly in some larger scale figures, they have a small wire through the sort of rim of the hood so that you can sort of shape it more tightly around, because most hoods tend to sit really wide in a small scale. But I really like these. I think they're just so well made, and I like the way that they fit on the figure. Just a really nice accessory. But of course, it does hide a lot of the Jedi details, especially for the High Republic characters that have forearm armor. And it's kind of a shame, because there are these brilliant gold shiny forearm armor pieces that are completely hidden when Yord is in his packaging. And you could just kind of get a glimpse of it in that side art, but now we can fully see it. I really like the gold touches in the High Republic. There's just something very sort of knight about it. Just sort of makes me think of, there's a little bit of sort of recollection for some of the Clone Wars Jedi that wear some of the Clone Trooper armor, but I really like the gold. There's just something sort of very regal about it. I love the aesthetic of the High Republic era, the sort of the gold tones, the yellows. It's really fun to finally have it in action figure form. Each of the Jedi characters have really unique details to their costumes. So let's go through Yord's outfit from his face down. So of course he has a very distinctive hairstyle. He's got some braids leaning over to this side. He's got a really small little stud earring here in his left ear, and I like the fact that his sculpted hair is a separate piece. There is a little bit of a color difference just in sort of natural light, and it's probably because this would have been made in the human sort of skin tone, so this part of the hair is painted, whereas this attached piece is probably made in that color plastic. So we've got plastic color and paint color, which sometimes is not a perfect match. It's pretty good, but I can see a very subtle difference there. And we've got, I think there's like a tiny gap here. I can just kind of make it out. Or there's like a little tiny bit of paint. There's just this tiny little gap there. It's probably, I'm never even going to notice it, because of course I have to look straight down from the top to see it. Now there's kind of an interesting thing going on with the face. Oh, this is actually just slightly bendy here. I got to be impressed with just how many little braids we've got here sort of flowing over, and they are just a little bit flexible. When I sort of lean on this part, I can sort of bend those closer to the head. But there's something about the face sculpt for this one, something about sort of the corners of the mouth give him a sort of like a little bit of a smirk. A lot of Jedi characters tend to have sort of neutral or perhaps slightly stern expressions, but there is something about the sculpt on this one. From some angles, it looks like a sort of classic neutral face, and then other times it kind of looks like he's really got a subtle smile going on, which I think is kind of fun. He is such an interesting character on this series. So pretty good paint there on the face as usual. We don't have too much going on. Eyes, eyebrows, and a subtle accent with the lips there as well. And of course we've got that very small stud earring there. So I have seen some discussion that the neck on this figure might be a little bit tall, but it's not too much that it looks sort of weird, but you can it does look a little bit more tall when looking at it from the back angles. From the front, it doesn't look too bad. I know that's, just certain people do have taller necks. It doesn't look quite as striking from the front, especially if I tip the head down a little bit. From the back, it does look a little bit more raised, but without really studying the actor's proportions, I can't say if this is accurate or Hasbro's gotten a little bit of an extra height there. So moving on to the Jedi tunic. Again, I love the yellow tones of the High Republic era. So we've got sort of like a mid-brown under tunic here right at the neck. It's kind of interesting that we have got a little bit of a asymmetry here. We've got it sort of higher on one side, not so much on the other side. And I'm not sure if this is just, the paint just kind of stops here. And it looks like the sculpting kind of continues for that undershirt. But then it kind of, yeah, I'm not sure if this is just missing paint, because it feels like that sculpting continues around the back and it just kind of stops there. I haven't seen other figures. This was the only one that I found out in the wild. And of course, with the robe on, you can't see that as well. So I haven't been able to see if this is supposed to be continued to be painted or whether they all just kind of stop there. Now we've got a very sort of lemon yellow Jedi tunic coming all the way down here with the sleeves. We can see that there. Then we've got like an extra sort of tunic part at the front here, a little bit more of an orange tone, kind of a beigey orange coming through. We can see that panel here. And then finally we have the yellow tabards over top that come into this sort of completed panel, and which is really different to the prequel era Jedi. The prequel era Jedi tabards come up and then down the back in two long strips, like we see on Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. In the High Republic era, a lot of the characters have the sort of more of a panel. And I gotta say, having worn Jedi costumes for many years, these strips have a tendency of falling off the shoulders if you don't sort of sew them in place. But with this design, those aren't going to fall off because they're held together by this one sort of piece construction style here in the back. So I got to say, for the performers and the actors on screen, this would be a much more comfortable version of the Jedi costume, which is probably helpful for a TV show, you know, where things have to be done to a little bit more of a tighter budget than on a movie where they can probably run in and go and adjust the costumes every time. I have to wonder whether that was an annoyance on the movies, because I certainly find that wearing versions of the costume at conventions. So I really like the sculpting on the Jedi robe sleeves coming down here. We've always got a bit of volume to Jedi sleeves, but rather than sort of flowing out over the back of the hand, we've got them tucked into forearm armor. Looking at the underside, we can see that we've sort of got like a brown glove that's got these brown straps that go on to the gold armor. And I absolutely love the gold tone here. Just absolutely brilliant. Such a shame that it was completely hidden by the soft goods robe. I know that the robe has to fall to the right length. If it was short, it would look weird, especially when we bend the elbow. This is just absolutely brilliant. I love the paint job here. We can see the sort of the sunburst design here that just looks lovely in this gold. And on the other side, we can see the brown glove with those straps on the underside and that lovely gold. Just absolutely brilliant there. And it's interesting that it is a different color gold than the little gold Jedi buckle here. This is more of a true gold. This is kind of more of a paler, brilliant gold. We've got sort of a yellow gold here, and this has a sort of a lighter gold tone to it as well. We've got a little bit of painting details here on the Jedi belt. We've got pouches and equipment, so we've got silver and gold on some of these details. Normally, the attachment point for many Jedi lightsabers is on the left, particularly in the prequel era and the original trilogy. We see the lightsabers hung on the left. For Yord, it is on his right side. We can see that we have a small little peg hole. The lightsaber hilt has probably got a small peg, so we'll check that out later on. Moving on to the back, we just got the two-tone brown for the Jedi belt. We don't have any sort of extra pouches or anything else going on there. I do really like the sculpting details of the belts. They are a lot taller wider than prequel era Jedi belts. I really are sort of like the extra steps and stuff like that. We've still got generally the brown leather belt with the thinner strap across the front, but we've got this sort of extra behind brown detail as well that just widens the whole thing. We've got one pouch here on the side, which we can just see there, sort of a classic brown pouch there, and we've got those iconic Jedi food capsules there on the other side. So I just want to do a little bit of a check to the lower tunic. Now, I've come across some interesting differences in some of the other Jedi figures from the Acolyte. So Sol's figure had a very rubbery lower half to the tunic. Jackie's was very stiff, and just by giving this one a little bit of a test, this one is stiff as well, made out of sort of what I feel like would be the same plastic as the top, like the Jackie figure was. And if you watched my Jackie video, you know that generally most of the time if there are robes, Hasbro puts in a split so we can get a little bit of movement from the legs. But doing a little bit of testing on my Jackie figure, because the lower half was such stiff plastic, I actually was able to notice very small splits, little cracks appearing at the top of this split where the sort of it was starting to rip. So I didn't test full leg articulation on my Jackie figure because I really didn't want to stress and potentially make those little cracks worse. And I get the feeling that this is going to be the same because it is very stiff plastic. I am not going to be able to get the legs up enough. That's taking a lot of force to bend that front tunic to that extent. So it's almost kind of weird that we've got these splits because I'm not going to be able to articulate the legs very much. We've got a very wide sculpted split here. That is just how the plastic is sitting. You can see the tunic on the back, if I move his arm out of the way, is actually sculpted sort of hanging, sort of sticking out more towards the back. So we've got a split here, and we can actually see that we've got that upper thigh articulation point here, so where we can sort of swivel the thigh from side to side. But in terms of actually getting the whole leg up from the hip, this is going to stop that. And I can kind of test that. That's about, I'm really putting a lot of force on that, and that's about as far forward as I'm getting his leg to go. So I'm not going to stress this because I really don't want to create a crack or a rip in the plastic, especially leading up to the Jedi belt. So that is kind of interesting. I thought because of the way that this sort of plastic was sitting, it would be the really rubbery ones, because you can kind of see in the construction that the lower half of the Jedi tunic is attached to the belt, and on Sol I can squeeze it and I can feel how rubbery even the belt is and the lower half. On Jackie it was all solid, and on Yord it's going to be the same, which is a little bit of a shame. We're not going to get much articulation in those in the sort of upper parts of the legs. I can just see the articulation point there. That's about as far open as I want to test these tunic parts. I do really like the sculpting on the plastic, the way that the Hasbro sort of sculpts in all of these little drapes and fabrics. We can just kind of see the light hitting on the sort of draping there in the back. They do a pretty good job these days of making things look like fabric shrunken down. We can see that we even have some different textures here. There is some sort of cross line, very soft texture here on these yellow tabards. I can see the sort of fabric texture here on the sleeves as well. Really subtle, but you can generally feel it when you run your finger or fingernail over the surface. You can really feel the textures, and it's different on different parts, which is really fun. I can sort of feel the different textures, and I like that they put that detail in there. Makes it look less like plastic. When I'm looking at it, I know it's a plastic toy, but the way that they've sort of sculpted on these sort of bumps and drapes in the fabric and the subtle texture, like we've got this really nice crease going on here that's sculpted in, because of course if he's raised his arm it would sort of pull there. I really like that. It just gives it a bit more of a realism there. We've got a little bit of sort of a little wobble there in the plastic where it's just kind of, I've got like a little, it kind of looks like a little bit of a split. There's like a tiny little gap in the plastic there, which you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But again, I'm generally going to be having my figure displayed from the front, so I'm probably not going to really notice that. We've got that sort of going on the other side. I kind of wish this was a slightly smoother edge. Not really sure what's going on there. But moving down, we've got sort of mid, almost a chocolate brown For the pants, we've got lovely sort of draped wrinkles there around the knees. I like the modern articulation on Black Series figures. When standing straight up, you almost can't see it at all. We've just got these sort of slot marks there in the back of the leg. But from the front, the draping on those knees almost completely hides the articulation. And then going down, we've got very reddish brown boots with some interesting straps. No paint detail on the legs other than just the pants and the boots being a different color. And we've got some articulation here at the, oh, very stiff at the ankles there. So I can get the leg to a pretty nice 45 there. And that one, like the ankles are very stiff on this figure. I can get them to about there. So it's pretty good, but that's about as much movement in the legs that I'm going to get from this particular figure, because I do not want to stress that tunics at the hips. Wow, that foot is really stiff. Oh gosh. That one was very stiff. I do get a little bit anxious because, yeah, if you get the legs or the feet stuck, then you can't stand your figure up very well. So he's definitely going to take a little bit of adjustment, but there we go. Let's test out the rest of his articulation. So I'm going to find where his arm articulation, that's very stiff. Sometimes the figures are just stiff straight out of the package and you sort of move them a few times, and other times they're just always stiff. So I can get his arms out to about that angle, just shy of a completely straight sort of T shape. Can rotate them around. Oh, very stiff. And yeah, the Jedi tunics do tend to cover over the shoulders too much, but we can generally get the arms up to a pretty high level. We can see the plastic and the articulation underneath, under the arms there. And he has got, of course, the articulation there at the waist. A little bit of a front and back, but because the tunic is so high, it's kind of obviously covering the sort of seam, which is underneath there. So it's stopping us from getting a lot of front to back, but we can do about that much. And we'll just test out his arms, because of course the arms for me, oh gosh, that is really stiff. Oh, there we go. The arms are the most important articulation points for me, especially on Jedi characters, because we're going to want to hold our lightsaber. So I can get his hand all the way up to there. We've got some really interesting sort of grip going on with this hand. If I sort of twist it around the wrong way, we can sort of see that. I like the two fingers. They're kind of like, you know, the old Force move, opening doors and things like that. So you can kind of do that a little bit sort of a Force gesture. But hopefully we've got enough there of sort of the other fingers forming a grip to hold our lightsaber in, because he has it in both hands in his side art. The other one is pretty much more of a classic grip there. We've got the sort of swivel and articulation. This one is side to side. This one is also side to side. We can see that we can get a little bit of a angle going on there, because I'm hoping to be able to get Yord into a two-handed lightsaber position where we can really see that forearm armor, because I think that's how I'm going to want to display my figure. Not sure if he's going to wear his robe or not, because I'm worried that it's going to hide the gorgeous gold forearm armor there. But I'm hoping that his articulation means that I'm going to be able to do a really cool lightsaber pose, because of course Jedi just need their lightsabers on display. So let's check out his lightsaber. So as usual, the Black Series comes with one lightsaber accessory. I do wish they gave us a separate non-ignited hilt as well as this. They do attach with a small peg, but I have had some issues with this with some of the other figures. That tiny peg is really doing a lot of work, and I don't like stressing or potentially breaking my one lightsaber accessory. Jedi need their lightsabers, and if this little thing breaks, you're a little bit screwed, especially with a unique color. Yord has a yellow lightsaber, and there's going to be a really hard, just trying to source something if you manage to break this. We can see he's got a really interesting hilt, one color, a dark metallic silver, with some cool details. We have an attachment peg there, which of course we have to remove the blade and insert this little peg into that attachment point on his belt if we want to sort of make him look like he is off duty and not in combat. So there are not too many Star Wars characters, or at least Star Wars action figures, with a yellow lightsaber. One of the main ones that jumps to mind is, of course, Bastila Shan from the video game Knights of the Old Republic. And if she's just gonna, no, she's gonna stand there. She has a double-bladed yellow lightsaber. So this is one of the few Black Series yellow lightsaber characters that I have, and indeed that Hasbro's ever made, because there just aren't that many. I was really curious to compare these two. Now on camera, this one looks just a tiny bit darker, and I think that's because this one just feels perhaps a little bit more see-through. It's pretty much the same plastic, but I get the feeling like this one just has a little bit more of a translucentness to it when I sort of hold them up. There's something that's just a little bit more of a cloudy yellow, and this one is a clearer yellow. It's kind of hard to describe, but on camera I can see that they are just a little bit different. We also have just a very subtle sort of blade length, because of course Bastilas kind of go all the way in. But generally speaking, the blades on a double-bladed lightsabers are just a little bit shorter anyway, just to sort of make them a little bit more easier to wield. If you've ever walked around holding a double-bladed lightsaber, you will undoubtedly hit something with it, because they are so incredibly long when you actually get them in your hands. So yeah, just thought it was just interesting to compare those two, and I was just curious to see if the yellows were the same. And I know it just could be different batches, you know, different runs of plastic. They'll always just have small variances, but really interesting to see. And I love just seeing another yellow lightsaber character. So I'm going to remove the blade. Oh, that one was actually, oh, that's different. I like that. It doesn't have the little notch. That is just a straight peg, and it's slightly longer. A lot of the other lightsabers that I have opened up for Black Series have this little notch in them, which means when you click it in, it kind of really grips, and means that you need a lot of force to remove it. That is a straight peg with no notch on it. Oh, I love that. Why is that so different to the other ones? It just kind of holds in there with tension. The other Jedi lightsabers from the Acolyte have that notch, and this one doesn't. That's fascinating. I was not expecting that. I was getting all anxious because I was expecting to have that same issue as the other ones. Because of course, if you want to put the lightsaber here, you've got to remove the blade. And if you break that tiny little crucial piece of plastic, then it's game over. You just don't have a bladed lightsaber. So we've got that little peg there. I'm just going to see how well this is going to go in. Okay. So it goes in there pretty easily. It feels like I could knock that off a little bit easier. It's not a particularly secure one, but I also feel like I'm not going to break off this little peg. It's short enough that I don't feel like I'm going to break it off, because that's another risk. I have a lot of anxieties about action figures breaking. So there's kind of a groove in his tunic. I like the way that that sits. It looks really nice. And it doesn't feel like it's going to get stuck or break off. I like that. Ah, this is a great figure. I love this lightsaber. It's not stressing me out. So let's go and see how well he can hold it. One thing that I kind of wish Hasbro would do is give us two versions. One like this, the hilt with an attachment peg so we can put it on the belt, and one that is a bladed version without the peg, because sometimes that little peg makes it a little bit difficult to get the lightsaber nicely into the figure's hand, especially on the Inquisitor figures with their really unique round sort of rimmed lightsabers. They've got two pegs right on the hilt, which means the hands sort of have to hold over those pegs. It's really annoying. Just a little quirk there of my opinions of being a Black Series collector. So I can get this one into his hand reasonably well. He holds that grip nicely. I can see that peg just below his hand there. It's actually a really short lightsaber. I've got the way, because his hand is not a tight grip, it's kind of more, a little bit more expanded. I'm not sure that I'm really going to get a lot of that into another hand. He kind of holds that pretty easily. I might be able to see if I can get that lower half into, I feel like I need to turn it around and see if I can get, it's going to be kind of a tight fit, and to see if I can get his other hand around that. And I've got to get that little notch on the other side, but he doesn't want to hold it that way. There we go. See if I can get his hand to slide around, and he's going to fight it, I think. There, I can kind of get that. He's kind of just holding on to the bottom. It's not really going all the way through, but I feel like it's a little bit weird to have your hands too close to the top emitter of a lightsaber. Always feels a little bit dangerous. He's not really holding on to that bottom part of the hilt. I can kind of get it sitting in his hand there. It's definitely going to take a little bit of work to get him fully holding onto his lightsaber. And I can't believe we've just got a nice straight. His hand just wants to kind of ping up. Got to move his arm up. There we go. Okay, so I got him into a bit of a two-handed grip there to hold his lightsaber because I absolutely love his forearm braces there, and I think they look amazing, and they just show off a little bit better with his both hands up. That looks brilliant. I love the yellow tones. It's just so strong. We've got yellow lightsaber, gold, yellow gold details here, his yellow tunic. He's even got a small gold earring there as well. Oh, he looks fantastic. Really fun. I'm really liking the High Republic era of Black Series figures from the Acolyte. So speaking of Jedi figures from the Acolyte, let's get in the other three that I have already unboxed and get them all lined up for a bit of comparison. So here we have the 4 Jedi characters from Wave 1 of the Black Series 6-inch figures from the Acolyte. Left to right we have Jedi Master Indara, Jedi Master Sol, Padawan Jekilon, and Jedi Knight Yord Fandar. I'm really excited to finally get all 4 unboxed and lined up. I think they look absolutely amazing together. Now that I have all 4 of them finally lined up, I can check out the differences and similarities between all of their outfits. In terms of the soft goods cloaks, we can see that we have a lot of different colors. There is a reddish undertone to Jedi Master Indara's. We've got the classic sort of dark chocolate brown robes for Jedi Master Sol and Jedi Knight Yord Fandar. They have the same colors, and Padawan Jekilon has a much more of an orange tone to her robe. I really like seeing all the differences. We can see that these 3 have the yellow tabards of the High Republic era. Jedi Master Indara has a very unique cream color with no tabards to hers. I think it's really interesting, but still she somehow really fits in well with these 3. I like the mix of lightsaber colors here. Of course, Hasbro has revealed that we are going to get Vernestra Rowe, and she has a different color lightsaber. Again, I'm really excited to finally get her at some point and line her up next to these ones as well. I love the High Republic era in terms of the aesthetics. Seeing so many Jedi all lined up, this is just a really cool lineup of unique characters. We've got some really interesting details. I love seeing them all lined up. This just looks fantastic. I'm so happy to finally get them all out. We've got yellow, green, blue. We've got different color robes, different color tunics. Just looks fantastic. I'm really happy. I think they look absolutely amazing. So happy to have these in my collection. Of course, I still have 2 more Black Series figures from Wave 1 from the Acolyte. Those are May and Osha. Of course, we have the twins for last. Of course, I'll be opening those up really soon. Really excited to complete Wave 1 of Black Series figures from the Acolyte. But these Jedi, they just look absolutely amazing. Such fun unboxings, checking out all of the details of these figures. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible, checked out all of the details, did a bit of comparisons, and had a lot of fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I recently unboxed the Padawan Jekilon figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.